What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me we have some more RPG horror stories. I kinda had a realization that lately I've been making either idiots as characters or himbos. Which I mean, I guess Morrow can be kind of a himbo, except he's not, buff or anything. He's more lanky. He's like string cheese. My other character, Rin, he's more of a himbo. I enjoyed playing Rin in VR chat roleplays, but I mean, I don't really have time for them, unfortunately, so I guess the best thing I could do is play that himbo in a D&D game. Which I actually did. I finally tried Fighter for the very first time, and oh my god, it was super fun. For anybody that's wondering, I played the Samurai subclass for Fighter, and oh my god, it is so fun. Anyway, enough of me talk about my weeb adventures. Let's go ahead and get some RPG horror stories for today. DM notices my dissatisfaction, reached out to try to make things better, and then went ballistic when I told him the problem. This was about a month ago when I was playing on a homebrew Forgotten Realms game via a paid DM a few months after the game had initially started. On a last session I had played with the group, I had some pretty bad stuff going on in real life and unfortunately brought some of that energy into this session. The DM noticed that and reached out to me after the session asking if he had done anything to make my mood worse. So I explained to him that I was having problems with not feeling like I was accomplishing anything, because if I failed or succeeded on rolls, I just didn't get anything from it. Very often the DM was calling rolls on inside during normal conversations while I was just talking to someone and trying not to pry. My character would fail them because my dice rolls were bad. I'd have to awkwardly regain the tempo after being told I couldn't read the person when I hadn't been trying to in the first place. When I succeeded on rolls, other party members would immediately jump into the scene and cut my character off from continuing their course of action. That last part about party members just jumping into the conversation and like correcting the course of action is only applicable if you're talking to somebody that's really bad and is plotting something really terrible, or they're trying to convince you to agree on a bad deal that is super bad. But otherwise, butting into another person's conversation is just kind of rude. I'm hoping the players are doing it consciously because they want to try to help the situation and remedy or try to course correct before something goes wrong. But other than that, yeah, I'd be kind of rude to just jump in on a conversation. It really depends on the type of campaign it is. If it's a campaign where have an insight to see if somebody is good or evil is kind of a important thing to have, and you want to be able to have somebody that can pick up on this sort of behavior, that could be a important mechanic, and jumping into conversation to course correct and prevent bad things from happening is fine. If it's not the kind of campaign, then it just seems kind of rude that the other players just jumping in mid-conversation and interrupting whenever you're trying to have a conversation with an NPC or some kind. So it really depends on the kind of campaign that is, but let's keep going and see if there's more of a problem to it. Then I mentioned very briefly that I was having a problem with another player who constantly jumped into scenes without any warning to ask mechanical questions and divert attention away from the scene taking place, or to insert themselves into a scene without any consideration for if they should do so, the primary case being my character reuniting with her fiance after they had been teleport spelled 18 miles past the city we were staying in, and how that bothered me since they had just a huge arc about their village and their family, while I was trying to establish my character still with his arc. Okay, yeah, that is definitely a problem. If a character is interrupting for mechanical questions and stuff, they can always just ask the DM in private DMs or something. I'm assuming it's an online game. They could just maybe pass a note or something, slide it over to the DM without interrupting the current ongoing thing. If everybody gets a story arc, then it's only fair that everybody gets the equal attention for their own personalized story arcs without other people interrupting. And if you have that one guy interrupting at the table, it's gonna be kind of a problem because you're trying to get in character, you're trying to RP and stuff, you're trying to do your thing, and somebody just keep asking, hey DM, can I do this over that? Yeah, it'd be pretty annoying. I would agree with you for sure. The DM then proceeds to use that information to talk about how he had been a DM for 30 years and he knew players like me who got petty and hostile at the slightest inconvenience, and how I was being unfair to my fellow players for having grievances with constantly being cut off. They then proceeded to kick me from the campaign and the server. I really have no idea if I was in the wrong or not, but their reaction felt so out of nowhere that I've still been thinking about it. Maybe we're missing context for really what's going on. Maybe some more things were said that you're leaving out. I don't know. I have no idea. But assuming the DM literally kicked you out because you said, hey, I don't really like when somebody's interrupting on the side or just butting into the conversation and stuff and constantly interrupting things. That's the only gripe and stuff, and that's the only reason why you kicked out. Then you know what? The DM did you a favor. If the DM really thinks you're being petty and stuff because you're literally voicing a complaint over somebody else interrupting you mid-conversation and mid-roleplay, that for your character story arc of all things, then I feel like the DM did you a favor. Seems like it was a crap group to begin with, and DM decides to side with crap players that interrupt or talk over each other, that instead of you, who is just voicing your concerns or complaints, they literally gave you an exit. You're free to take your character to whichever game you want, to start your own game, or have your friends join games and stuff. You're free to do whatever you want now. Really strange for kicking you out over that. That's, again, if that's the only context that is missing. If there's context missing, then maybe there's something else going on. Maybe something you said that maybe did seem kind of petty or something, or maybe the way you worded things maybe sound kind of petty. But if the DM literally kicked you out for having complaints over another person interrupting, run free, child, join whatever game you want. Either way, let's get to the next story for today. DM might have made healer make a pact with magical child traffickers. There are story titles out there that really make me question, am I gonna get in trouble for reading this stuff out? But you know what? I ain't a coward. I ain't no bitch. Let's go ahead and get into it. My party recently saved a minor child who was kidnapped from town by an unknown evil entity. Minor child? Does it mean this could be like a major child or a greater child or a lesser child? Sorry, I'm just making stupid jokes. Let's continue. The only information we were able to uncover about the potential evils is that there's at least 3 evil beings. They're very powerful and they're very, very good looking. We found their headquarters quickly. Wait, hold on a second. You found out that the BBEGs, the evil people, are good looking? Is that like DMs know to be like, oh, my BBEGs are so hot? Is that what it is? Was that really a necessary thing to learn? They're really good looking. Of course they are, because the DM described them and designed them to be so pretty and suave, unless they're like vampires. We found their headquarters quickly, but once inside we found it empty save a few trash mobs. Killing the trash mobs, we located the missing child and eventually released the child from their locked cage. Interviewing the young child, we were able to get an idea of a suspect that fit a person we had met previously in town. Awesome. Something to bring back to the guards. Justice will be served. Before we departed, the party searched for any clues, items, or signs to help us understand these evil creatures better. The only thing we found were magical Viagra, magical lubricant, and a magical brew that forces someone to fall in love with you. We're all adults at the table, and we laughed. But in the back of my head, it struck me funny, and I wasn't sure why at the time. Yeah, that would be giving off a lot of red flags. I mean, first of all, they had a child in a cage. They literally had a child in a literal cage. Unless they wanted to cook the child and eat the child, they had all this magical Viagra or magical lubricant and stuff. Maybe just me. Maybe potentially foreshadowing from the DM. Gross foreshadowing, mind you. Right as we turned to leave, our healer was told by our DM privately that he was struck with a vision that instructed him to grab a peculiar magic item off of a shelf. The healer pushed the party aside, grabbed this odd magical item, chanted strange words, and finished by ringing a bell. There was some AoE sound effects. We didn't get time to talk in game about what the hell just happened. Back in town, we have tried to inform the guards that children are being trafficked and that we have a positive ID on a suspect. The guards, with whom we have a good relationship with and who have deputized us, said they doubt that. They don't agree with our suspect hunches and brushed us off. The guards very quickly, without us being able to roll any checks, left to tend to other businesses. When the healer was on IRL bathroom break, my party huddled together. Started talking about what the hell's going on with the healer. There's no way the healer hasn't taken an oath and gained a patron that's aligned with evil. If the entities in the HQ are not evil, then why or what are they trafficking children for? I think your DM was kind of foreshadowing that. Kind of gross foreshadowing, DM. Really gross, but let's see how this plays out. I keep thinking about this and getting stuck on a bundle of sex aids and lube in a bedroom, immediately next to where the child was caged. If this does not ring any bells for you, then I guess on one hand, you don't want to think your DM is just being that creepy to be like, hey, this stuff next to the cage where the child is, probably that's what it was used for. You don't want to think of your DM being an actual creep, but at times, if it's very plain, it's very obvious, I think it's perfectly normal to ask you, DM, do these two things that relevant to each other? Are you really using this stuff on a minor? Really, DM? Listen, if something does seem a little bit off, I think it's perfectly fine, regardless of story canon or anything, is to ask what the DM intends to do with this sort of thing. Is this appropriate or not? The way it's leaning is kind of showing off that DM is sort of pushing the story narrative that these sickos, these weird people, are using sex aids and children. I didn't want to say it, dude. I really don't want to say it. It's just gross. It's just genuinely gross just to even say it. I'm just gonna continue with this story and hope that it turns well. But it's an RPG horror story, so we know it's not going to. In real life, I told my healer, who is my best friend IRL, that if his character aligned himself with a patron that is trafficking little kids to do terrible things to them, I have to kill his character. Note, my healer didn't know anything about this plot and is as in the dark for what's going on as I am. Not because I'm lawful good, but because it's freaking disgusting and no one in the homebrewed world seems to care, except the party members who are staunchly anti-child trafficking who have adopted this serious phrase in-game. If you guys notice it's kind of leaning in that sort of direction, you probably should have just talked to your DM, just like out of character, just be like, hey DM, is this a weird child trafficking kind of thing? Because we're not really cool with this sort of thing. Seriously, like, there's nothing wrong with telling the DM that you're genuinely uncomfortable in a specific situation the DM is plotting. Obviously, if everybody at the table agrees with the themes that are going to be at the table, right, they're okay with playing it out, even though they may not agree with it, that's one thing. But if, let's say, for example, this is going to turn to something really gross that nobody consented for, nobody even thought this would be going into the weird direction the DM is kind of trying to pull it to, then you guys probably should have talked to the DM out of game and tell him, hey, is this really leaning in that direction? Because we ain't cool with that sort of thing. It's just kind of gross. It's nasty. You know, we don't want this sort of thing in our game. To my DM's credit, the idea of a party member getting a patron and taking a demon to warlock is pretty cool, and I appreciate that effort. I think this blunder resulted due to the first time DM tried to mix grimdark roleplay with adolescent humor, and it wasn't thought through. Although this is not the first strike where weirdness has gone on. This game is a 100% homebrew world with specific half-species always and only exist because their mothers were abused. We were not informed of this when choosing our species. PCs who unwittingly chose that species for their PCs are reminded of their parents' trauma by almost every NPC that we talk to. If not that, then the NPCs are outright hostile to those PCs to where they can't speak because their appearance and history is a total block to getting anyone to talk to them. It's left almost all town interaction to human players only, really punishing the world where all magic is illegal and all magic items are illegal. Session 1 of our wizard's book was almost confiscated by authorities because we slept in an inn and they knew we had something magical. Even talking about magic is taboo and we have to speak in code or we get in trouble. That being said, we aren't kids and we're all taking this stride and adapted. The entire group has an average age of over 40 to 45 years old. Either way, I'll talk to my people in DM about this directly once I process this more and figure out the most delicate approach. I don't want to injure our first time DM who is putting in a lot of effort. I'd like this game to keep going, but with less alluded to, accidental or not, child abuse and PC background abuse. Hold on, hold on. Let's go ahead and start from the top, right? First of all, as a first-time DM, like having a grim, dark, kind of a darker setting is fine, but you don't have to put in this sort of abuse stuff if you don't want to. Does your DM know that they don't have to if they don't want to, right? Oh, maybe they do. Maybe. Oh my God, this is difficult to process. Okay, so you don't have to have horrible things happen to the people in your story at all times. It's fine for your characters to just. But when you put a bunch of these pre-tacked notions and consequences for certain things, like not being human or using magic, when most of the playable creatures that you have in D&D 5e or other editions are non-human, and magic is basically unavoidable because it's everywhere, and punishing players by putting in a sort of notion that if they are non-human, their parents must have gone through some sort of horrible abuse, or they may go through horrible abuse and stuff. It's something about this plot point it's just nuts. It's just so much. It's just too much. I definitely say you may want to talk to your DM and basically ask him to tone down some of this stuff potentially. I mean, it's particularly tone down and not include any sort of like child abuse stuff for sure. That's 100% because I think most people would feel pretty uncomfortable with that sort of thing. But at the same time, the DM is alluding with things that are very blatant, like having a cage with a child and then all the sex aid stuff right next to them, which is genuinely gross. It really is gross. Why is it? It's a first time DM. Why are they going so hard into that? Oh my God. You probably want to have a little bit more experience, like understanding the tone and stuff for the whole. Why that theme of all theme? It's weird. I mean, I guess people can run whatever games they want to run, but like as a first time DM running with that sort of theme where you have child trafficking and potential abuse stuff going on with children and people that are non-human, they were born because of abuse instead of just being. I mean, play whatever world you have, but oh my god. And who knows what kind of things are plotting for their healer and stuff, right? For the healer getting some sort of a warlock patron, a warlock patron of child abuse? A child trafficking? What the hell? If somebody is pushing specific dark themes and getting a little bit too into them, I don't know if it says more about them or it says about the writing or the interest. I don't want to prejudge the DM specifically, but if somebody's going so hard and so committed towards making sure that child abuse is a thing, I mean, that'd be a theme that make most people uncomfortable. Just everything doesn't add up. The BBEG is apparently described to be super hot and attractive. Why? I don't understand why that's an important thing to know. The children are described basically being found next to sex aids, like lubricant, like lube, magical lube. Why do you need magical lube? Why do you put the magical lube and the caged child next to each other? That's so weird. And the guards don't care. And then apparently the healer has some sort of a patron connection with patron of child abuse. You know, I gotta say, this kind of turning a little less into like an actual like grimdark RPG and more like a fetish game. Because even grimdark doesn't go that deep into a specific theme. Yeah, some of the themes could be a little bit grim, like a little bit tragic, super tragic. But there are a lot of grimdark material out there that is done tastefully. There's a way to do it tastefully, and then there's just blatant child in a cage next to magical lube. It is just kind of gross and slimy and weird. Are you sure you guys aren't playing like a weird fetish game, the DM is? Because for a first-time DM to come up and just conduct this out of nowhere, this is a lot. Almost seems a little pre-planned, a little pre-written, a little bit predetermined, a little bit prepared ahead of time. Almost like out of the weird sex vault. Which is really gross to think about it. Ugh, DM, why would you do that? Maybe I'm just prejudging the situation, but it kind of feels like a fetish game. Kinda. Actually, very much so. Very much so alludes to being a fetish game and less of like tragic moments or tragic people kind of game. I mean, with every single non-human is always a byproduct of some sort of abuse, and children being part of some sort of cage abuse. I say talk to the DM and see what kind of themes they've been going for, and maybe they need to tone down some of this stuff. Lean more into the grimdark and less into creepy weepy, because creepy weepy is ugh. Grimdark, it will be actually kind of cool. Actually, I think the story could use a little more grimdark and less gross. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.